The envelope wasn't hidden. It was just sitting there, on the passenger seat, like it belonged there, like it wanted to be seen. I didn't open it right away. I stared at it for a solid minute, fingers tightening around the grocery bag in my hand, frozen halfway into the car. The soft blue color caught the sun just right, and I thought for a second, maybe it's from a charity Delaney works at one, right? Maybe it's a thank you card. But no return address. No logo. No sticker. Just a faint perfume I didn't recognize. I set the groceries on the floor mat, slid into the driver's seat, and picked up the card like it was some delicate evidence in a crime scene. My heart was already thumping, and I didn't even know why. I hadn't done anything wrong. I just wanted the coffee creamer she forgot. The flap was already loose. It had been opened. Inside, in thick gold ink. To the best mistress in the Southeast. Counting the minutes till next time. That was it. No signature. No cute doodles. Not even a date. I stared at the words. The phrase best mistress started echoing in my head like a chant. My throat dried up. I blinked once. Twice. Still there. Still real. I glanced around the parking lot like someone might be watching me read it, like I was the one being exposed. Then I placed the card face down on the center console. I didn't want to hold it anymore. I didn't want it touching me. She had taken my car that morning. Said hers was making that clicking sound again. She always says that when she wants to take mine. I never question her. She came back home around noon. Said traffic was bad. Kissed me on the forehead like she always does. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I stood in the kitchen, watching her scroll through her phone at the table, legs crossed, still wearing the same flowy skirt she left in, except now it was wrinkled in the back. The lipstick was fresh though. Bright coral. She doesn't wear that shade for errands. I told her I found the card. Quietly. Almost like I was confessing my guilt. She didn't even look up. Just said, "What card?" I walked over. Set it gently next to her phone like it might shatter. "This one." She glanced at it. Didn't flinch. "Oh, that," she said. "Oh, that." Like I'd handed her a flyer for a neighborhood barbecue. "You're seriously reading into that?" I just stood there, waiting for anything that made sense. "Probably left by one of the board members," she added with a shrug. "You know how weird they get after fundraisers." "You're saying someone left you a card?" I said, slowly, "calling you a mistress? As a joke?" She smiled, but not the kind of smile I'd seen in years. This one was crooked. Pitying. "Emery, honey, you have to stop doing this to yourself. You spiral. Every time. I wish I could tell you I pushed back. That I called her out. That I demanded answers. But all I did was nod. And then I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and turned on the faucet so she wouldn't hear me trying not to fall apart. That card didn't lie. And she knew it. But she also knew I wouldn't leave. Not yet. The card didn't disappear, no matter how much I wished it would. I tried stuffing it in a drawer, wedging it behind old tax envelopes and user manuals for appliances we no longer even owned. But every time I opened that drawer for anything, a pen, a receipt, batteries, it stared back at me. Not like paper. Like a secret that refused to be buried. I started noticing things I used to brush off. Her phone was always face down now. Always. And it never buzzed around me. Never. Either she had changed her notification settings or she was just better at hiding things. But the quiet was louder than any ringtone could have been. And I hated who I was becoming. I hated the way I lingered outside the bathroom door when she showered, wondering if she was texting him in the steam. I hated that I memorized her mileage so I could check if she'd really just gone to Trader Joe's. I even started smelling her clothes when she wasn't looking. Yeah, I did that. That's who I am now. 3 days after finding the card, I caved. I waited until she left for late Pilates, and then I sat in her car like a criminal, searching. Not for anything specific, just for proof. Something solid. Something to match the weight in my chest. The glove compartment was empty except for expired insurance slips and a dried-out lip balm. The center console held nothing but spare change, gum wrappers, and an unopened pack of gum with one stick missing. The back seat? Clean. Almost too clean. But when I checked under the driver's seat, my fingers brushed something soft. Fabric. I pulled it out. A scarf. Silk. Deep red with black stitching. Not her style at all. Delaney hated scarves. She once told me they choked the personality out of a good outfit. But there it was. Lightly perfumed. Not the scent she wore. Not the scent I'd ever smelled. I didn't even know what to do. My heart was pounding like I'd stolen something. I dropped it like it burned and slammed the door shut, nearly kicking over a flower pot on the porch as I rushed inside. I felt insane, violated, ashamed, like I caught myself doing something wrong. She came home smiling, of course. Hair still slightly damp, cheeks pink, yoga mat slung over her shoulder like a weapon she didn't even know she was holding. I watched her walk past me and throw her gym bag down like she was exhausted. But I didn't speak. I couldn't. I just stared at the scarf on the kitchen counter. I'd left it there like a dead fish, daring her to lie to my face. She spotted it immediately. "What's this?" she asked, brows furrowed with the casual innocence of a daytime soap character. "I found it in your car," I said. She picked it up, sniffed it, laughed. "This? Oh my God. That's Marcy's. She left it last week when I gave her a ride to her dentist." "You told me Marcy hates rides because of her vertigo." Delaney froze for a half-second. Maybe less. But I saw it. That tiny mental lag. That scramble for cover. "Well, she didn't feel well that day," she said smoothly, flipping her hair back like it was my logic that was falling apart. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something about the way she gripped that scarf, like she didn't want to let go of it, made my stomach twist. She saw my face and sighed. "Seriously, Emery, this is exhausting. You dig through my car, accuse me over a dumb scarf, and now what? You think I'm having some torrid affair?" I said nothing, because I wasn't sure I believed it. I knew it. But what could I say that wouldn't make me look like the paranoid husband she kept painting me as? She walked off again, muttering something under her breath, something I couldn't quite hear but felt deep in my gut. That night I couldn't sleep. I laid awake staring at the ceiling fan while she slept beside me like nothing had changed. The silence was unbearable. Every tick of the clock felt like a slap. So I got up around 3 a.m., went downstairs, and opened the drawer again. The card was still there. Wrinkled now. A little warped from where my hand had crushed it earlier in frustration. But the words hadn't changed. "To the best mistress in the Southeast." Tomorrow, I promised myself. Tomorrow I would start finding answers. Because if she wasn't going to give me the truth, I was going to dig it up myself. Even if it buried me in the process. I didn't sleep that night. Or the night after that. My brain had latched onto a loop I couldn't escape, rewinding conversations, analyzing glances, revisiting years of quiet suspicions I'd buried under the banner of trust. It wasn't just the card anymore. It wasn't even the scarf. It was the pattern. The unsettling, sickening rhythm of someone slowly rewriting your reality while smiling at you across the dinner table. On Monday, I called in sick. Again. I told my manager I had some kind of stomach bug, which wasn't entirely a lie. The nausea was real, just not viral. I spent the morning pacing between the living room and the kitchen, debating whether I was losing my mind or finally finding it. At 10:17 a.m., I opened her laptop. I'd never done that before. Never. Not in all 12 years together. Delaney always said privacy was the foundation of trust, and I believed her. But that foundation had cracks now, deep ones, and I needed to know what was growing inside them. To my surprise, she wasn't even logged out of her email. The first thing I noticed was that her inbox was almost too clean. Folders were organized, labels color-coded. She always told me she was a mess with technology, but her inbox looked like it belonged to a project manager at NASA. And then I saw the archive folder, hidden under several nested labels with boring names like logistics and internal memos. I clicked through each one, heart hammering in my throat. There were dozens of messages. Short, sparse, but they told a story. Most were from a contact saved as J. Harrow. The name meant nothing to me, but the content. Same time Thursday. Your car or mine? You smelled like cinnamon again. Dangerous combo. My fingers are still sore from holding back. I stopped reading. I stared at the screen, unsure whether I wanted to throw up or smash something. I didn't even know what holding back was supposed to mean, but it didn't sound like restraint. It sounded like heat, like intimacy, like everything I hadn't had with her in years. I checked the sent folder. My stomach twisted again. Let's not leave anything in the car this time. He's been nosing around again. I think he found the card. Tell your wife you're in a mentorship program or something. My hands were shaking. Not a metaphor. Physically trembling. She knew. She knew I'd seen the card. And not only did she not care, she mocked it. Treated it like a mild inconvenience in her little side romance. I took screenshots. I didn't know what I'd do with them yet, but something in me needed to preserve the proof. Proof that I wasn't crazy. That the man lying awake at night wasn't paranoid. He was being erased piece by piece while the woman he loved slept soundly beside him. I closed the laptop and sat on the floor for almost an hour. Everything felt heavier than it should have. The air, my body, even the silence in the room had weight. Later that afternoon, she came home early. Claimed a meeting was canceled. She tossed her bag on the counter, pulled off her heels, and asked if I wanted Thai food for dinner. I looked at her. Really looked. She was humming. That same soft tune she always hums when she's pleased with herself. She walked over and kissed me on the cheek like nothing in the world had changed. But something had. I didn't answer her about dinner. I just nodded like a puppet with strings fraying at the ends. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did and just didn't care. That night, I didn't eat. I told her my stomach still hurt. She shrugged and ordered takeout just for herself. Red curry and spring rolls. Her favorite. She scrolled through her phone while eating. Occasionally giggled at something on the screen. Occasionally glanced at me like I was part of the furniture. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask who Hera was. I wanted to shove the screenshots in her face and demand answers. But I didn't. Because some part of me still needed to know how deep it went. Because the most terrifying part wasn't that she cheated. It was that she planned to keep going. And I wasn't sure what I'd do once I reached the bottom of whatever this was. The following morning felt surreal, like waking up in someone else's life. I sat on the edge of the bed long after the alarm went off, staring at the floor, listening to the sound of Delaney brushing her teeth. It was strange how normal everything still looked. Her robe on the hook. Her makeup bag open by the mirror. Her soft humming, the same melody she always used while getting ready. But now it all felt like props in a theater I no longer belonged in. I was supposed to go to work, but I didn't. I called in again and lied. Said my mother had a fall and I needed to drive her to the doctor. That was the first time I used my mother as an excuse, and it made my skin crawl. But nothing felt clean anymore. Not even my lies. Delaney left without much conversation. She gave me a peck on the forehead and said, "Text me if anything comes up with your mom." The performance was flawless. Her acting deserved an award. I should have clapped. Instead, I closed the door behind her and slid down to the floor, knees to chest, like a child trying to make himself smaller. I had no plan, just a need to act. So I drove. I didn't know where I was going until I was halfway there, her office. The nonprofit she worked at sat in a brick building off 5th and Maple. The sign out front read Southeast Community Initiatives, and it looked innocent enough. Inside those walls, she was the respected coordinator of regional programs. Smiling. Articulate. Trusted. I parked across the street and waited. Maybe I thought I'd see him. Harrow. The phantom from her inbox. Maybe I thought I'd recognize him instantly, like he'd carry the aura of betrayal on his face. But hours passed. Nothing. And then, just after noon, I saw her. Delaney stepped outside with 2 coworkers, laughing. She had her phone in one hand and a to-go coffee in the other. She looked light, like someone who'd never caused a single ache in another person's chest. Then he showed up. I don't know how I knew it was him. Maybe it was instinct. Or maybe it was the way her body changed when she saw him. He wore a pressed shirt, sleeves rolled up, phone clipped to his belt, confident like a man who had nothing to lose. He walked up behind her and touched her back. Not flirtatiously, no, it was subtle. Familiar. Like his hand had been there 100 times before. She turned slightly and smiled. That smile wasn't the one she used on me anymore. My throat tightened. They didn't kiss. Didn't even hug. Just exchanged a few words. And then she handed him a folder and went back inside. But the way she lingered for that half-second too long, it told me everything. I didn't follow him. I didn't confront him. I just sat there, car running, fingers locked around the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me upright. And I realized something I didn't expect. I wasn't even angry. I was hollow. Like my body had already processed the heartbreak and left behind the dust. When I got home that night, she was already there. Cooking. Something smelled like garlic and wine, probably that mushroom risotto recipe she pulls out when she wants to feel elegant. The kitchen was warm, cozy, comfortable. A complete lie. "You're quiet today," she said while stirring. "Everything okay with your mom?" I nodded. "Yeah, they're keeping her overnight just in case." She smiled sympathetically. "You should have told me earlier. I would have gone with you." I almost laughed. I wanted to ask, would he have come too? Or were you planning to check in between meetings? But I didn't say anything. I sat at the table and watched her pour wine into a pan, the steam curling upward like it was trying to escape. Later that night, when she fell asleep beside me, I did something I never thought I'd do. I created a new email address. A fake one. I wrote a message to Jay, Harrow. Simple. No threats. No accusations. Just this. I know. I'm not stupid. You left the card. And you're not as clever as you think. I hit send before I could change my mind. I didn't know what I wanted. A reply? An apology? A confession? I don't know. Maybe I just wanted him to feel even an ounce of the weight I'd been dragging behind me for weeks. An hour later, I got a response. Just one line. You should talk to your wife about February 17th. Everything changed that night. I read it 5 times. February 17th. That was our anniversary. We had dinner reservations that night. At River's End. She canceled last minute. Said she had a migraine. She stayed home in bed with the lights off, and I sat downstairs alone eating boxed macaroni and watching reruns of a show she used to love. She lied. And that night, that exact night, was the one he mentioned. I looked over at her sleeping body, curled away from me like I didn't exist, and something inside me cracked. Not anger. Not sadness. Clarity. I was going to find out what happened on February 17th, even if I had to burn the whole illusion down to do it. I sat in the dark for hours, staring at her back, her rhythmic breathing the only sound in the room. February 17th. That date looped over and over in my head like a riddle I'd missed the first time. I wanted to wake her up and ask, what did you do that night? Where did you go? Who were you with? But I didn't, because I didn't want another lie. I wanted the truth. And at this point, I knew the only way I'd get it was by forcing it out into the light. She wasn't going to confess anything unless cornered. And even then, I wasn't sure if she'd break. The next morning, I told her I had errands to run. She barely looked up from her coffee, said something about picking up a birthday card for her coworker Talia, and reminded me to grab almond milk on the way back. She was wearing that gray sweater with the tiny hole in the sleeve, the one she always wore when she wanted to appear casual and nonchalant. Like nothing was eating her alive from the inside out. Unlike me, I drove straight to River's End. It was 20 miles away, tucked by the water with a view of the hills. It was supposed to be our place. We'd been going there every anniversary since our 3rd year. I remembered that night vividly: candles, wine, the way she used to look at me like I mattered. This year was supposed to be the same. But instead, she'd claimed a migraine and vanished upstairs with her phone while I sat alone in my best shirt, wondering if I'd said something wrong. I parked near the back and walked in, not sure what I was even going to say. I didn't have a plan. I approached the hostess stand and asked the young woman behind it a question I never thought I'd ask. Hi. Do you by any chance have records from your Valentine's week reservations? I know it's a long shot, but it's important. She looked at me funny, like I was about to accuse her of credit card fraud, but after a beat, she asked me to wait while she fetched the manager. A few minutes later, a man in his late 40s came out, thinning hair, polite but guarded. Sir, we don't typically share reservation details for privacy reasons. I leaned in slightly. I'm not asking for anyone else's information. I'm just trying to confirm something personal. There was a reservation on February 17th under the name Emery Danner, but I never showed. I just want to know if someone used that table anyway. Please. He studied me. Then, with a long sigh, he motioned for me to follow. We stepped into a quiet side hallway by the office. He opened a slim binder from that week and flipped through it. There was a note, he said slowly, running his finger down the page. Says, confirmed. Guest called to update party size from 2 to 1. No refund needed. Woman dined alone. My blood turned ice. Did she actually eat here alone? The manager paused. Honestly, I don't remember her face, but the server that night, Daniel, might. He's in the back. Daniel turned out to be a younger guy, maybe mid-20s. When asked, he said it took him a moment to place the night, but then nodded slowly. Oh yeah, I remember her. Pretty. Brown hair. Red coat. She wasn't alone, though. The guy showed up about 10 minutes after she was seated. I thought it was strange she didn't book it for 2, but whatever. They were close. Close? Daniel hesitated, clearly sensing something was off. I mean, not obnoxious. Just intimate. Leaning in, laughing a lot. I remember because they ordered the exact wine pairing we had recommended for couples that week. I couldn't feel my legs. Thanks, I mumbled and walked out without saying anything else. I sat in my car for a long time. The sky had gone gray, and it was starting to drizzle, but I didn't care. I just kept replaying it over and over in my mind. She had used our anniversary dinner to wine and dine her affair partner. Not only that, she kept my name on the reservation. She took my night, my place, my table, and filled it with someone else. When I got home, she was on the couch scrolling through her phone, pretending like her world was unbothered. She glanced up and said, "You didn't get the almond milk?" I didn't answer. I walked straight past her, into the kitchen, and pulled the screenshots from my email. I printed them out, her messages, his reply, the restaurant note. I placed them into an envelope and slid it under her pillow. Later that night, she climbed into bed beside me and said nothing. She didn't find the envelope. Not yet. But she would. And when she did, she'd know, finally, that the game was over. Only I wasn't sure what that meant anymore. Ending it? Exposing it? Leaving her? All I knew was that the truth was no longer just mine. It was ours now. And she'd have to look it in the face. She found the envelope the next morning. I knew the moment I heard the subtle hitch in her breath. She was in the bedroom, behind me, standing by the bed with that damn pillow in her hand. I didn't turn around. I stood in the doorway, watching her through the reflection in the tall mirror across from the dresser. Her fingers paused at the seal. Then, slowly, she peeled it open and slid out the contents. I saw her eyes dart across the page. Her expression didn't crack, not at first. That was what struck me most. She didn't gasp, didn't crumble. She just stared. Then she folded the papers calmly, like she'd received an unexpected bill in the mail. She sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on knees, her hands clasped around the envelope. And then, as if we were discussing the weather, she said, "How long have you been watching me?" The question hung in the air like smoke. I didn't answer right away. I couldn't, because I wasn't sure what answer would satisfy either of us. Was I watching her? Or had I just finally opened my eyes? I took a step into the room. "You were supposed to be mine," I said, my voice catching on the words like barbed wire. That night, Delaney. February 17th, that was our anniversary. "I know," she said simply, still not looking at me. "You canceled. Said you had a migraine. You stayed in bed while I sat downstairs like an idiot reheating leftovers. And you were at our restaurant with him. The same reservation. The same night. Did you do it on purpose? Did you need the poetry of it to make it feel more real?" Finally, she looked up, and what I saw in her eyes wasn't guilt. It wasn't even regret. It was exhaustion. "You don't understand, Emery," she said softly, like she was consoling me for something I couldn't grasp. "You haven't understood in years." I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her and demand to know what I had failed to see. But I didn't move. I just stared at her, suddenly aware that I didn't recognize the woman sitting in front of me. This wasn't my wife. This was a stranger with my wedding ring on her finger. "Then help me understand," I said, quieter now. "Please." She sighed and stood up. "You stopped seeing me, Emery, long before I ever met James." "James," I repeated. "You say that like it should mean something to me. Like you're doing me a favor by finally giving the affair a name." She didn't flinch. "I'm not excusing what I did, but I'm also not going to grovel. You think I planned it? That I set out to destroy you? I didn't. It just happened." He listened. That's all. He listened when I felt invisible. My knees felt weak. I sat down slowly, as if the ground beneath me was shifting. "I listened," I said. "I always listened." "You heard me," she said, "but you didn't see me. There's a difference." The words felt rehearsed, like something she'd told herself in the mirror a dozen times, justifying every lie, every meeting, every kiss. I asked the question I'd been holding in for weeks. "How long?" She paused. 7 months. It hit me like a freight train. 7 months. While I was worrying about how to save our mortgage during my overtime cuts. While I was hand-stitching our bathroom wallpaper to avoid hiring someone. While I was fighting panic attacks in the shower so she wouldn't hear me. 7 months. "And now what?" I asked. "You just keep going like nothing happened? You expect me to roll over and pretend I didn't see the emails, the card, the scarf, the dinner, everything?" She looked at me and, for the first time, her lip trembled. Just slightly. I don't know what I expect. We sat in silence. A long, impossible silence. I wanted her to say she was sorry, that she'd cut it off, that she'd fight for us. But instead, she said something that made my stomach turn. "He makes me feel like I still exist." That's when I knew. Not just that she cheated, but that she'd already left. Her body was here, standing in front of me in our bedroom, surrounded by our shared life. But her soul, her loyalty, they were long gone. Given away piece by piece to a man whose cologne I could still smell in my car's upholstery. I stood up slowly, nodding. Okay, she echoed, eyes searching mine. "Yeah," I said. "Okay." That's all I needed to hear. She looked confused, maybe even a little afraid. But I didn't say another word. I walked out of the bedroom, down the hallway, past the kitchen where her coffee cup still sat half full on the counter, and I stepped outside into the cold. The wind hit me like a slap, but I kept walking. Around the block, around our neighborhood, around the version of my life I thought I had. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I knew I couldn't sit in that house 1 minute longer pretending she hadn't shattered me in slow motion. I walked until my legs ached and my throat was dry, until the afternoon sun gave way to dusk, and the streets started to empty out like the air had thinned. I passed the same row of shuttered stores twice without realizing, my mind running in circles. I wasn't trying to run away, I just couldn't figure out how to go back. Because back wasn't there anymore. Back was gone, replaced by a version of my life I didn't recognize. A home that still looked like mine but wasn't. A marriage that had already expired but hadn't told me. I ended up at a diner near the edge of town. The kind with sticky tables and coffee that tastes like metal. I sat in the corner booth, ordered nothing but a glass of water, and watched the steam rise off other people's plates like they lived in a world I no longer had access to. I should have called someone. A friend, my brother, anyone. But I didn't. Because I knew how that would go. They'd tell me to leave her. That I deserved better. That I should be angry. Furious. But I didn't feel angry. I felt defective. And that's what scared me most. At some point I pulled out my phone and stared at the email thread with Jay Harrow. I reread his line. You should talk to your wife about February 17th. That sentence had started everything. And now everything was crumbling around it. I stared at the contact name. I hovered my finger over it. Then, without thinking, I pressed reply. Let's talk. That's all I wrote. It felt reckless. Stupid. But also weirdly necessary. If he was so comfortable slipping into my life, maybe it was time he looked me in the eye. To my surprise, the reply came just 15 minutes later. Meet me. Tomorrow. 6 p.m. Parking lot behind St. Vincent's. Short. Cold. Like I was a problem he needed to deal with, not a human being who had been living inside the wreckage he helped build. I didn't reply. I just stared at the screen for a while, my hand shaking slightly, and then turned off the phone and slid it into my pocket. I went home late that night. I half expected to find my things boxed up or a key waiting for me on the counter. But everything looked normal. Too normal. The living room lamp was on. The TV was quietly playing some sitcom we used to watch. Delaney was asleep on the couch, arms wrapped around a throw blanket like a child hiding from a storm. I stood in the doorway and watched her breathe. It would have been easier if she looked like the villain. If she had a cruel face, sharp words, or even an ounce of visible shame. But she didn't. She looked peaceful. Tired, maybe, but peaceful. And somehow, that made everything worse. It meant she believed her betrayal was justified. That hurting me was collateral damage. I didn't wake her. I just stood there for a long time, then went upstairs to the guest room. I didn't want to sleep in our bed anymore. I didn't even want to touch the pillows. The next day passed in a fog. I called out of work again. No excuse this time, just silence on the line when the shift manager asked if I was okay. I sat at the kitchen table with a mug of untouched coffee in front of me and waited for the clock to crawl its way towards 6. At 5:15, I got in the car. I arrived early, sat in the far end of the lot where no one could see me clearly. It was quiet, save for the hum of passing traffic and the occasional footsteps from the church next door. At 6:03, he showed up. James. He was taller than I expected, confident in a boring, corporate kind of way. Shirt tucked too neatly. Watch that probably cost more than my car. He approached slowly, hands in his pockets, like this was a business deal. He stopped a few feet away from my driver's side and looked at me through the window. I rolled it down halfway. Emery, he asked, voice calm. I nodded. He glanced around. You wanted to talk. So talk. I studied him. His face was clean-shaven. His expression unreadable. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to scream. But none of that would bring anything back. I just wanted to see you, I said. The man who took my life and didn't flinch. James tilted his head slightly, almost like he was confused. Look, I didn't force anything. Delaney made her own choices. I laughed quietly. Of course she did. And I guess you just accidentally ended up in my car, my dinner reservation, and my wife's inbox. He sighed. Look, I get it. You're hurt. But the truth is, she's not the same woman you married. You've been holding on to a version of her that hasn't existed in years. She just didn't have the guts to tell you. His words cut deeper than I expected, because part of me believed them. Why did you send the card? I asked suddenly. Why would you be that careless? For the first time, James looked uncomfortable. I didn't leave it for you to find. That was her. She left it out. I blinked. What? He nodded. She said she was tired of pretending. Said maybe if you found it, you'd finally confront her. She didn't want to be the one to end it. My jaw clenched. So she used me to do her dirty work. She thought you deserved the truth, even if it hurt. I looked away. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing how much that broke me. He stepped back, like he was preparing to leave. You deserve someone who actually wants to be there, Emery. Don't waste more time trying to fix something that's already done. I didn't respond. I couldn't. He turned and walked away. I sat there long after he disappeared around the corner. The air in the car felt heavier than ever. And for the first time in weeks, I realized I was done waiting for her to choose. She already had. Now it was my turn. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. Not when I stepped back into it that night. Not when I stood in the hallway listening to the dishwasher run. Not when Delaney looked up from the couch and asked if I wanted tea like it was just any other Thursday. I didn't answer. I walked past her, up the stairs, and into the guest room. I closed the door and locked it. For the first time, the lock wasn't about keeping her out. It was about holding myself together. I laid awake staring at the ceiling for hours. My chest felt lighter than it had in weeks, but it wasn't peace. It was space. Space where something used to be. I had loved her, truly. I had sacrificed for her. I had doubted myself over and over to protect her version of truth. And in the end, she handed her loyalty to someone else and expected me to thank her for the honesty. But James was right about one thing. I didn't need to keep trying to resurrect a woman who no longer existed. I didn't need to stay in a story that had already ended. The next morning, I quietly packed a single duffel bag. Just the essentials. My laptop. A few changes of clothes. My old journal. I left my wedding ring in the silver dish by the sink, the same place she used to keep hers before she stopped wearing it. I paused by the door on my way out and looked back just once. She was still asleep on the couch. I didn't wake her. I didn't need another fight. I didn't want another lie. I just wanted silence. Real silence. Not the kind filled with unspoken resentment and fake smiles. Just the kind that lets you breathe without apology. I checked into a small, quiet rental just a few towns over. It was nothing fancy, a converted garage with a tiny kitchenette and a creaky bed, but it was mine. The first space in years that didn't carry her scent, her voice, her echo. And for the first time, I let myself cry without guilt. I cried for the man I had been. For the man I lost in all the overthinking and self-blame. For the boy inside me who still wanted to believe love meant forever if you just held on tight enough. But mostly, I cried because I knew I wasn't going back. Over the next few weeks, something shifted. I started walking again, not aimlessly, but with purpose. I reconnected with old coworkers, helped a neighbor fix his roof, even went to a community art class just to remind myself what color looked like. I wasn't trying to rebuild everything at once. I just needed to remember that I still existed outside of her shadow. One day, I got an email from Delaney. Short. No grand apologies. No please. Just a line that said, I hope you're healing. I know I hurt you more than I can ever say. I didn't respond. Not out of anger. Not out of pride. I just didn't need anything from her anymore. The healing didn't come all at once. There were still nights I woke up reaching for someone who wasn't there, and mornings where the quiet made my heart ache. But I was learning that peace wasn't the absence of pain. It was the ability to live without fear of it returning. 3 months later, I applied for a job in a nearby town. Something different, community logistics for a housing nonprofit. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was rebuilding homes while quietly rebuilding myself. I got the position. It felt like a small miracle. And one evening, while locking up the office, I bumped into someone. Her name was May. She dropped her folder. I picked it up. We laughed. She offered to buy me coffee as a thank you. I said yes. It wasn't fireworks or fate or some romantic movie ending. It was two people meeting with nothing to prove. And that was enough. I don't know where things will go. I'm still tender. Still figuring out who I am when I'm not the husband trying to hold it all together. But I do know this. I deserve to be chosen, completely and without hesitation. And maybe, just maybe, that starts with finally choosing myself. So if you're reading this, and you're where I was, doubting your gut, shrinking yourself to make someone else feel bigger, holding on because you're afraid of what comes after, please hear me when I say, it does get better. Not louder, not flashier, just better, quieter, kinder. Yours.